Acceptance.
Yes.
That's a very interesting word.
You like that? I've been practicing it. I said I'm going to be accepting everything as it is.
Hey, I like that. I like that frame of mind. To be honest with you, when you say acceptance, I totally embrace that. So it's funny you said that because I was thinking this word in in my mind this morning when I woke up. It was that frame of mind. To be honest. Oh, sorry about that, sister. It was the thing I was thinking was called was it's not attachment. It was also acceptance too, but it was in a different kind of a way. You know what I mean? It
You're
was
framing it around what?
it was it was it was it was actually acceptance. So we're actually aligned today, which is very strange. You know what it was? I
What?
was telling myself that we have like attachments to things, right?
Right.
And the attachments are actually a thing of where we need acceptance for, because we
Right.
don't want to have to be like I say, I guess in my viewpoint of this, I was thinking about accepting reality for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because truth be told, I realized something recently, which is that it actually came from a conversation I was having with my brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it said he came to a realization, and I totally agree with them all, is that women and children, they require uh, fantasy, so they require embellishment of realities, right? Whereas men are like more practically embracing reality most of the time. Again, and we talk in a very general sense, right? So what he was telling me was, if he wanted to get his son to clean the room up, right? Shout out to Wes and Heru. But he said if he wanted to get Heru to clean the room, if he made it a game, then Heru would be all in on it, right? But if he made it what it was, right? If he say, "Hey, man, let's clean up this room," then there's resistance, right? And
Right.
I know this also, like with women, it's that way too, right? So, like, I guess an easy way to illustrate this point is if you ask a couple how they met each other, you know what I mean?
Okay.
And so, what will happen is, most of the time, the woman has this like grand thing. Even in your story, like how you met Bruce and all this stuff,
Uh-huh.
it's more grander than Bruce's situation. So it like say you told me, oh, I heard his voice and this crowd of things, and I said in my mind that's gonna be my husband and all this, fan fairy tale fantasy land stuff. Bruce said, she stepped on my foot.
Well, let me help you with something because I love our dialogue about men and women, and it's interesting because I had a similar kind of discussion with myself. So I've told you before, there's a little Sarita that goes in my brain, and
Right,
that
right.
Sarita like really kind of makes me understand reality, and it kind of holds back that chokes that mule that want to say the truth, in situations the truth don't need to be shared in that context. And what it kind of taught me is that men process things through such a practical lens,
100.
and that women, um, much to perhaps our strength, can really be imaginative, and that imagination
True,
um, allows for limitless possibilities. And
true.
so I think what you're describing is that experience that I was kind of the little Sarita was trying to explain to myself as me and my husband, who we've been together many years, like 20 something. I can't remember all of them, but over 20 years, and we definitely have a different model of communicating. And
Yeah.
in the early years, that different model of communicating created a lot of tension. In
Mhm.
the later years, what it creates is a lot of withdrawal, because we both are like, what,
Mm.
this
Because you
isn't,
know each other now.
we know each other now. And
Mhm.
but there's a couple of things that have made the situation good, is that we are both committed to being in our relationship, and I think that's just a choice that we've made. But going back to really what happened with young brother Haru and brother West, is that on a developmental course, uh, at the stage that that child is in, everything is supposed to be fun. I mean, eating food, getting dressed. And the problem with adults a lot of time is that we are stuck on serious, and that, we create a lot of seriousness around things that can be fun. I mean, like, who doesn't? I would clean up the whole house if we were in here dancing to "Where Them Fans At." I could probably clean my house faster than anybody else if that song was going.
That hillbilly song with the
The
fans.
hillbilly song. The hillbilly song. Listen, it
I
gets
like
me
that
to work.
song.
You like it? I like it too. Look, I like when they go pop, 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 pop.
I like watching it. Let me clarify it. I like watching that.
So again, in your primitive, I've told you this before in the Rose Garden, that men are so primitive. Your little butt brain just ruling the world. You like seeing them girls throw that behind, don't you?
Well, no, honestly, I think it's definitely a thing that's it's definitely feminine, right? It's a feminine song, right?
What makes it feminine?
Fan, but so I like the fact that because of the whole thing, but who are men walking around with fans? I mean, just think about like when you're in church or whatever, where the fans are a thing. The fan dancing fan thing, that's for females.
Well,
right?
I see a lot of guys is getting it, man. They getting it.
Guys be doing it, but I just be thinking to myself, like, okay, well, this for me, it's certain things, right? Like I think that in the spirit of who a person is, right? Like
Right.
resonate with you a certain kind of a way, So things that are for females don't resonate with me. You know what I mean?
Well, brother, I need you to touch your sensitive and vulnerable part and recognize that dancing and expressing yourself does not make you anything other than a man. Men can dance.
I think men can dance in a certain type of manly way. In a certain type of manly way.
So you're not trying to see certain things. What you ain't trying to see? What you ain't trying to see? You ain't trying to see popping that hip. You're not trying to see the pop that hip.
No, not at all. But if that's what they want to do, I accept that.
I'm telling you, because today we're at acceptance, aren't we? We're all about acceptance. And it's a really important thing, like, to be at acceptance, because a lot of things have happened. Like what happened was, if people have been following the last couple of weeks, I've been really tense and reacting to what's been going on in the world. And it's overwhelming. I mean, I think I had this chaos reaction where I was shutting down and just really feeling the heaviness of it. And then at some point I really got to, I'm going to focus on the things that I can accept and the things that I can control. And that made me feel a lot more empowered. And I got busy doing the business of work. In the last 2 weeks, I can say I've been extremely productive. Now, did that change some of the outcomes of what was happening in this new direction that the administration is going in? No, it didn't really change it, but it definitely changed my focus and the way I was putting out. I bring that all up because one of the things that was happening in that situation was I was having problem solving difficulties, and that was leading to interpersonal difficulties. This is going to really resonate with you because I love Black people. And I think one of the primary issues we have as Black people is we have poor problem solving skills. And this was proven to me on yesterday. My poor husband had a procedure, so he had to be at the mercy of my driving. And if you know anything about me, my family calls me Bang Bam 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 because I've been in a number of accidents. I'll be the first to let you know I be tearing up vehicles, or I did tear up vehicles. I think the last 10 years I have matured in my driving. And I don't tear the vehicles up the same way. But yesterday, Mr. was definitely my passenger, and he was enjoying it up until a moment. And this moment was really, really, really powerful. So we go to this small intersection, and I'm going to tell a story like a woman. You got to ask my husband what it really happened.
You got to put the fairy tale on it.
I got to put the fairy tale on it. We go to this intersection. There's basically it's a sidewalk on both sides, and it's 3 lanes. So we're kind of like in the middle lane. No, we're in the last lane, the third lane, but where the sidewalk is the option. Then there's another car, then there's another lane. So we hear behind me, or I hear behind me, a horn that goes boop, boop. The horn, so I pay attention. I look in the rearview mirror. Now, my husband, who's always on 100, like even in his vulnerable state, he was under anesthesia yesterday. He couldn't really even move fast. I see him start, surveying the landscape, but I'm still just like, oh, whatever, somebody, boop, boop. And it was behind me, I see the guy kind of raise his hand and like, oh, I'm sorry. So he must have cut that car off. But in the time that it took my eyes to look up, that individual who had tapped that horn was coming out of the vehicle with a aluminum bat, an aluminum bat. Okay. Now, two things went through my mind at that moment at the same time. Number one, how you hit that horn so fast. Number two, why you got bats in your car? Like, is that a part of your problem solving process? But then the unthinkable happened in these seconds. He's giving this person all the business, and the guy's really like, I could see the guy kind of like, and he takes that bat and shatters the window. You hear, psh, okay? And so then I'm like, that little Sarita in my mind started talking again, like, oh, it's about to go down. So the normal response is you look at that more. My husband's sitting next to me. He immediately looks up. He sits up and says, Sarita, you're going to have to pop that curb. Because then the guy that was putting his hands up jumps out the car. Okay.
Where was it at? In front of you or behind you?
It was the guy that got hit, the window shattered was directly behind me. Okay. So at this point, I'm like, this can't be happening. Like it's all happening real fast. And then at the same time, a baboon, and I call it a baboon because I went to see Pop this week, and he described a woman character to me that he was describing as a baboon. And a real live baboon jumped out the car, and lo and behold, that baboon also has an aluminum bat.
Wow, both of them have a bat.
Both these people have aluminum. Now,
the two people having the bat wielders, are they from the same vehicle? Or
they're from the same vehicle. So the one dude that got cut off has an aluminum bat. So I'm like, now in my mind, I'm like, y'all people carrying around two bats, and the one that the baboon had, the female bat, I'm gonna call her the baboonist. Hers was colored. It was a pink handle, so it was a painted aluminum bat. Right. So there's a point to this story. So after the melee, so they, she's over there saying, do something. The guy is trying his best to kick out the light of the individual who done now smashed his window. All this is happening at a light at an intersection. My husband is like, Sarita, you're going to have to pop that curb. You got to get out of here. And then I'm like, I couldn't hear him at first because I was so mesmerized. And so he sits up like, girl. Then, he starts to start telling me like what to do. So I snap out of it. And then I'm like, okay, my husband was during this whole time was surveying how we get out of it. Because he said, look, if that dude is got a pistol, we got to get out of it. Because we are like literally the next car over. But the whole time on the ride home after that, I was telling him like, that was a really unfortunate road rage situation that didn't have to happen among people of color.
That's true.
And that the issue really that's missing in that scenario is good problem solving skills. Because like at the end of the day, that person was safe. Certainly he had gotten cut off, but did it warrant getting out of the vehicle and then him actually committing a crime where you're busting out somebody's window and damaging their property? And then you escalate it even worse because your partner in the car now comes out with bats and aluminum bats, and y'all are threatening this individual, which could have escalated quickly. And I thought to myself, like, as people, Black people really have a lot of empathy, right? Because we are very accepting of people. We take in all kinds of strays in our community.
That's very
But
true.
with each other, we are not displaying the same level of empathy that we give other people. And I think also in these momentary reactions, we go to this aggressive kind of response versus one that's thought out and is good for our community. Because like, let's just say Bruce was right and somebody had a pistol in that situation and they started shooting, 3 lives would have been really, and perhaps any bystanders who might have gotten harmed in that would have been harmed over, getting cut off, and everybody was safe. Like, by the time that man was able to blow his horn and create a ruckus, and there was no damage to the vehicle done, like everybody was safe. And that happens. And I thought quickly, like, I started this, they all say, I've been in some accidents. I would hate for somebody, a baboon to jump out the car with a bat on me, because I don't carry aluminum bats. Maybe I need to start carrying bats in the back. but that's just not something I have naturally. And I would hope that the obligatory gesture of "oh my bad" would have been warm enough for that person to understand that it really was no harm, no foul. So I just really am struggling greatly with how we've lost the ability to problem solve. Like, is that nature, nurture? And then, but at the same time, there's so many great characteristics about the Black group of people and the Black population that shows me we have a lot of empathy, care, and concern for people, but that we don't do it for ourselves. So that was a very long-winded way of telling you like how I'm getting to acceptance is I'm really looking around and being like, people ain't well, and I need to not be able, I need to be able to respond in a way that is nourishing my community, nourishing myself, and understanding that a lot of people are on 10 for no reason, for getting cut off, for these minor infractions.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, honestly, like you say, I think certain things plague, our communities. And when I'm talking about our community, I'm talking about the melanated ones right now. But one of those things is it seems like uh, the world has been effective on us to be always like conscious on race, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're more centered and conscious on race than a lot of other folks are, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the way that I feel like this reflects in the way that we treat each other, it's like we believe the hype of what is told about race, and in terms of like inferiority or supremacy and stuff like that. We believe it, and to a certain degree, I think if you're looking at things from a relative perspective, you could see some validity in what's being said, right? But then also, like put it this way, I think that who is demonstrating real strength in certain scenarios, right? If we look at somebody that, let's just say right now, if that guy did have a gun, right,
Mm-hmm.
that got his window shattered out, right,
Right.
and he's by himself. It sounded like, and
Mm-hmm.
then this other guy and his woman, they're together, and they're really, in my mind, looking for trouble because they already got the implements of trouble in their vehicles with these aluminum bats and all this stuff. I mean, that could be that they, they're baseball coaches or whatever the case.
Right.
Could be that. But the fact
Right.
that they took to using those bats, which really could have put themselves in a super precarious situation, because that dude had a gun. Let's just say he was a police officer.
Right.
He felt threatened that they did that, right? Which if they knew he was a police officer, I wonder if they would have the heart to
Exactly
do
that
that,
way.
right? But then if he did end up shooting them both and killing
Right.
them both, he would have been totally justified, right?
Right. Right.
So I say that that the way that they went about doing it is creating a ridiculous situation for themselves for nothing,
For nothing.
absolutely nothing. And with these huge issues that we actually really are facing, people are not, when you're doing that kind of stuff, right? Because I guess ultimately, buying into the story that is being told,
Mm-hmm.
it promotes that type of behavior, because it's like we always got to be defending ourselves. We always got to be tough. We always got to be on this thing, right? But
Mm-hmm.
we're not connecting with each other. I
Right.
was thinking, going back to the acceptance, right, and the realities versus fantasies and stuff like that. I found myself having these conversations where, even you and I do it, where we're both saying the same thing, right? We might be coming from a different perspectives. I might be the male, you might be the female. You know what I mean? You
Right.
might be seeing it through rosy glasses. I might be seeing it through clear of it, clear eyes. You know what I mean? Clear.
Mine got to be rosy though. Okay. I got
you but it's a nice little world you live in with the rosy glasses, right? That might,
right. I
because
told you I'm more creative. It gives us the
but
creative.
let's just say though that we both say the same thing in the end, right?
Right. Right.
But instead of us appreciating the similarities in each other, like for me, I personally know what it's like to live with challenges. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe like hidden disabilities and challenges and stuff like that.
Right.
So I automatically believe, like, if somebody's having, like, if they get in an accident or they're driving slow, whatever, they might be having problems in that car.
Hmm.
I mean, so I'm not getting into my mind like, oh, they getting in my way or they doing this. I'm connecting with, someone else and thinking like, well, do they need help? Is something
Right,
wrong?
right.
All this stuff. But people ain't thinking that way because they just thinking. Totally. So there was one time I had picked my daughter up from school, right? Because I was the daily chauffeur for the princess, right? I mean,
Right.
to and fro. And here it is, we coming back in our neighborhood, right? I'm driving the speed limit, right? It's a neighborhood where a school is right across the street. So in those places the speed limit is a lot slower, right?
Right.
So I'm driving the speed limit, and we like two turns away from where we living at the time. So some dude behind me is on the horn, doing all kind of crazy stuff and everything, right? And if you want to talk about, I don't know what you say, butt brain, the way I look at it is my primitive mind kicked in, even though I have my daughter with me, right?
Right.
And I and I pull over and signal the dude up.
Mm, mm, mm.
And then we get into a little exchange, but I think that when he saw my energy, he didn't want that smoke. But
Right.
I was thinking to myself though, so the comment he made was, "You were in my way. This road belonged to you. We shared it. We share this world with everyone. You know, with
Right.
each other. But some people have a hard time sharing, right?
Right. Right. They do. But I
Yeah.
think I think the bigger thing for me in that sense is like again the empathy, and it's this duality about who we are as Black people. Is like like I said, I know the Black community takes in strays and has for a long time, and other
100%.
communities aren't necessarily that open, right?
Mhm.
So we have that capacity, we have that potential, but again, even like to ourselves, and I guess in moments where that same level of expression is needed,
Mhm.
we don't necessarily do it. And so I find myself asking the question, uh, one, where does that come from? Which I probably, you and I today or tomorrow, we're not going to answer that easily.
Right, right.
The second part of that is like, how do I contribute to that?
Mhm.
And what you just described with the princess was you contributed to that in one way where you were modeling for her probably the dysregulated part of that.
Yeah,
I think
definitely, definitely, and I mean, she expressed it, right? Because
good for
I
her.
saw some embarrassment on her part, and you know, instead of her seeing it as, but again, this probably is a deeper, uh,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
but instead of her seeing it as, um, I was provoked by an antagonist, she looked at it as, "Oh my God, you're a big bad wolf," and I'm like,
Right.
"Look at your behavior," and all this stuff, right?
Yeah,
So,
which is interesting. It's
but
interesting.
huh? Say it
That's
again.
interesting because
Yeah.
so the princess didn't have empathy for you, and she had
No,
empathy for that other
yeah,
person.
she had empathy for a total stranger. She didn't have it for me. So now I
Right,
look at it though, and I was thinking, like going back to the point of what you were saying with what your husband was doing, which is trying to protect you and him.
right,
I
right.
was saying that and being I could have been reckless too because what if that thing could have escalated or whatever. I had some my daughter with me, so I should really be looking out for her safety, as
Right,
well, right?
right.
So I was thinking, who demonstrates the most power? It's like a person who in a situation really has none, right?
Mhm.
Or even if it's equal, let's just say if right now I'm holding a baby in my lap and I'm bouncing the baby and all this stuff, and the baby doesn't know any better, and they grab a little knife off of the kitchen counter or something, and they stab me with the knife, right?
Right, right,
Now, how do I react to that? Do I throw the baby across the room into the
right,
wall,
right,
or do I demonstrate restraint because I know that baby didn't mean it?
right.
I
So
mean,
it sounds like what you're saying is that we have choices, that like all of our behaviors are choices. And I think that that's a really good point. I also think that there is a missing model in our community on so many levels, and like how are we being models for that? And like I heard you just say, in that situation, it created embarrassment and some other things.
Right.
I certainly have some situations and scenarios I'm not proud of as a parent, that I've done, but also like as a friend and as a human. But
Right.
I do think that now we need to be able to show examples of that more. And
Mhm.
that brings me to an interesting other observation about acceptance for me this week was the Stephen A. Drama that's going on with LeBron James. And I actually heard LeBron James's kind of response on one of these shows where it resonated with me differently, perhaps, because like I'm not necessarily a big sports fan, and like for anything to be attractive to me, maybe this is the creative part of me and that kind of rose colored glasses to me, is the voice has to sound good, right? Because I don't ever have time to statically listen to something. And I
Mhm.
can honestly tell you that even before this scenario, Stephen A's voice did not sound good. So there
Yeah,
was an
exactly.
absolute rejection of anything Stephen A just by sheer voice. Now there's somebody named Bomani that my husband and my son listen to, melodic voice, and I can
Mm.
deal with Bomani's voice.
Mhm.
Ryan Clark's voice, absolutely can deal with Ryan Clark's voice. But Stephen, some others, right? I bring up the people who I believe are Black that my family listens to. Again, I'm not ever in a position based on my work schedule where I'm doing anything static. But I will tell you that Stephen A voice has never, it's like nails on a chalkboard to me.
No, I
And
hear you on that.
it is like it's dreadful. And I'm like, who can listen to this? That just the nails on the chalkboard. But what what bothered me about the entire exchange for both parties was one, and again, this is a reference that Pop said when we were younger, when my son was younger. Pop was at a fat football game with us, and
Mhm.
at the time my son was on a team that was mostly African American, I think all Black at the time.
Mhm.
And everywhere we went, every team, no matter where we are in the state,
Mhm.
there was discord. But one day that discord turned over to the parents and they were fighting. And we happened to be in a place where most of the other spectators on the other side were white.
Okay.
And Pop moved us all away. Pop and my husband moved us all away and he said, we are right now? We're entertainment for
Yeah.
those other people. And he didn't want his family, and my husband didn't want our family to be that entertainment, even though of course we weren't in that level of discord. And that is what I heard at the moment of all of this, is like, here are two Black men who are now entertainment for a group of other people who don't have the same community, right? We are a part of our community and don't have the same things to lose, and are also kind of buying into the stereotypes about our inability to problem solve.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest thing I took from it, is that these two Black men who both come from very passionate perspectives. I think Stephen A's perhaps is more entertainment based than what was LeBron's perspective on the entire situation. But
Mhm.
the inability to problem solve stood out to me. And then from Stephen A's perspective, his lack of empathy for what he was doing, even if that's his job, was he missed an opportunity to reflect, to learn from the brother, to invite the the discourse, I'm sorry, so that then instead of being entertainment, they could have been a part of a beautiful problem solving solution that might have
Yeah,
started with a bad,
it could have been an example.
a great example.
Yeah, I get you on that. You know, it's interesting you say that, right? Because going back to statement I made earlier, which is that I feel like the thing is race is not real. You know what I mean? Like we can look at each other, but within inside of the same thing that we're calling race, right? Is a lot of differences. So let's just talk about the melanated community, right?
Mhm.
There's tall, short, thin, fat, dark, light. You know, there's all these different,
Baboons.
yeah, papoose, of course, right? But what I'm trying to say is ultimately we all have one head, two arms, two legs, right? We
Right,
human beings, you know.
right.
So to get caught up in the rapture of this nonsense, right? Of things that separate us, because I think also if we just take down to the basic microcosm, right? If we just look at the fact that just the gender difference, men and women are different, and we want to say, uh, in as much as one is male and one is female, which the base word exists in both of them,
Right.
right? Is
Right.
the thing is we want the same things, right? We feel the same way about things, right? So
Mhm.
instead of us focusing on the differences, right? Like let's just say, for instance, it is true that the way a woman's mind is, like you say, they may be more imaginative and they might be more seeing the world through rosy colored glasses, and men are more practical and all that stuff. That might be true, right? But in as much as it is, there's still a reality, right, that we're both living inside of. So if your reality is a little bit more dressed up and prettier than mine, we can still agree that we're in a similar place. Like we were saying, we're on Earth, we're breathing air, we're subject to the laws of gravity and stuff like that, right?
Right. Right.
So what I'm saying is, why are we not looking at the things that make us the same, right? Because let's just say, in order for us to be people, that means a man and a woman has to come in together and procreate. Now, I don't care if you white or black, if you're decent, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
The two people who have come together, if we're going to call a baseline reality something, a standard of how it should be,
Mhm.
they should be in love with each other. The man should respect the woman should respect the man. They should be husband and wife. They should create a family that they both care about.
Mhm.
These kids they both care about, and they both put all of their energy and effort into doing that. And as much as you're black, white, yellow, red, who cares what you are?
Mhm.
If you understand the role of parent, you understand the role of husband and wife, and these things should be similar,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Now, in as much as these things are the same, we should respect it in each other.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
what people want to do is they want to make us different from one another.
Mhm.
I ain't never seen nobody that could live forever.
Right.
I ain't seen nobody that could fly through the air unassisted.
Right. Right. So we're a lot more we're a lot more same than we're different.
We're a lot more same, but we want to think that we're different.
Mhm.
I know the Bible used to say something about like, you could see the splinter in somebody else's eye, but you don't see the log in your own,
Right.
right?
Right. Well, and we
But
are different in some ways. Like there's a lot of uniqueness to us, but those differences enhance what I think what I'm hearing you say is those differences enhance the entire community of humanity.
yeah, it does, because what it does is it makes it more stylish and flavor, and all that. Like let's just say, for instance, it's like food, right? Fundamentally, food is just nourishment,
Mhm.
fundamentally. But we dress it up, you know what I mean? We put
Well,
spice.
well, wait, we gotta identify who. I'm gonna let y'all know. Grandma Rose dressed it up. Uh, Grandma
some,
Lucille
some,
dressed it up.
some people
Some people
got
can't
problems with that. Like for me, myself personally, right? I make edible nourishment.
You
It's
keep
not, it's
referencing
not, it's
yourself,
not,
and
it's
I've
not,
never
it's not,
seen you behind a
hey, but it's not presentable. It
pot.
ain't, it ain't like, restaurant style presentable.
Right,
If I
right,
have to live, I can make enough food for me to live, and other people that want to eat a meal with me to live. But like you said, that might not be my exact forte. But the bottom line is this nourishment, right?
that's not your gift.
That's not my gift. But the fundamental thing is that food is what food is supposed to do for us is give us the fuel to power our bodies so we can live, right?
Okay, I
And we
got
got choices on the food that we eat, but no matter if what you choose, it
it. Right.
still it still does that fundamental purpose in one way or another, right?
Okay.
So what
Okay.
I'm
I
saying
got
is
it.
that's what the differences of people are. It's like somebody is a chicken, somebody is steak, somebody is apple, somebody is a pear, somebody is a banana, but you just fruit.
Right. Right.
Ultimately. So why I can't say that that a banana is superior to a grape.
Right. Right.
The grape and banana, they the same thing for
Right.
real. You know
Right.
what I
But
mean?
humans do a good job of that distinction. And the part of it is that you mentioned this earlier about this idea of power.
Yeah.
And I think that that has devastated plenty of societies, plenty of communities, and maybe even our community, the melanated community, even more, because from a organized perspective,
Yeah.
it's well known that our power structures are not. We don't have a good power center, and at least one that's recognizable. Like I think within individual systems, like our families, certainly there's a power structure that people honor and feel some sort of way about. But when we look at it sociologically, uh, melanated people, and I'm not going to just say all melanated people, I'm going to say Black people in particular have had power, the power structures taken away from them.
Yeah.
And and that there's a cost to that. There's a consequence. There's a way we show up in the world when you recognize that you're being acted upon instead of acting on. Now,
100%.
the freedom of that, like again, when I started this off about acceptances, and this is kind of the same thing about responding to chaos theory, and feeling very powerless in this dynamic of what we are experiencing and what we're going through,
Mhm.
is you always have a choice on
Yes, you
how you respond to the structure. And the bottom line is, one thing's for sure about humanity is we are, every day that we wake ourselves up, we are progressing closer to death. Like you said, I ain't never seen somebody who could defy that.
know.
And so, since that's the truth, and usually the most adaptive reaction, our primitive reaction as humans, is we don't want to die. So we're going to do everything we can to avoid death. Is that could be compliance, that could be this, it could be all these reactions that we're starting to see. But I bring that up because you do get to decide in what direction you're going to die in. Like, so am I going to die on my knees, or am I going to die fighting? Am I going to die with principle? Am I going to die having a weak integrity? And I think, that's the thing that's the power that can't nobody take away from you, right? Like, and Black people don't recognize that. Like, I don't, like, I don't care. Two things happened to us by being raised by grandma. Like, nobody can tell me too much about who I am, because I already know who I am. Right? It's not dictated by what you say I am, and
Right.
perhaps that was the rearage. Right? It's dictated by what I say I am. So, like, if today I say I'm the best looking chick on in Germantown, I'm the best looking chick in Germantown. That's what you
Well,
got, right?
I agree with you. Like that one point that you made right there is interesting because I was thinking that let's just take any person in the world, and you just try to get them to remember their first conscious thought, right?
Mm.
And I would bet anything on this. Your first conscious thought is not knowing who any of these things that other people will label you as.
Mm-hmm.
Like, say for instance, if you're Black, your first conscious thought is not knowing that you're Black,
Right.
that you Black. What makes that who you are is what the world has told you
Right.
about yourself. And
The
that's why I
environment.
said, yeah, with the environment, what the community collective consciousness has told you that you are, and you
Right.
embrace that. You know what I mean?
Right.
But my whole thing is consciousness really doesn't know nothing of itself. So you haven't even seen yourself in the mirror when you first have the first conscious thought.
Right.
You have no clue. So if when you first are opening your eyes to this reality, and you look out, and let's just say you're a Black child, but you have Asian parents. You see them, and you got Asian siblings, and you think you're that exactly like them because you haven't seen yourself.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is, because that's not the center of your consciousness, right? It doesn't matter. It has absolutely zero
It has
bearing.
no point. Yeah.
Yeah, it has zero bearing. But then when it starts mattering is what the whole world agrees about this characteristics of a community of people. We agree that they the bottom of the totem pole. We agree that they are the leaders of their superior. We
Mhm.
agree that they set the
We give
standards.
them that. We give them that.
We give you that power because we bind into this thing. We're subscribing into this philosophy that they that has been imposed on us.
Right.
right?
Right.
Now when you got the power, like you said, to accept and to choose, now you can reshape that. You
Right.
know, because I would say that the difference between us and the people who are seemingly in power, right?
Yeah.
I say seemingly
Mhm.
in power is because
They walking towards death too.
they walk towards death too. Plus, also, in order for them to maintain power, their power depends on people supporting it.
Yes,
You know,
they do. And that can be, and that's a fickle thing. That's a
that's a
fickle
fickle
thing.
thing. That's a fickle thing. But like truth be told, like the real law of nature is the survival of the fittest,
Correct.
strongest survive. That's not our socialized world, right? So I think that there's a thing of the way that people who became in power now, they lack real honor, right? And I say that to say the people who are really strong, like the real strong people, they also have compassion. They also have love. They have empathy. So they look at something and they say, well, why would I rather fight you with my hands than pull a gun out on you? Because ultimately, yeah, we got a struggle. We got a conflict that requires us to be violent with each other. But the instant outcome is not, I don't want to take your life. You know, it's just like watching these animals in the wild fight. You know, like you'll see two apex predators fight each other, like two bears, right?
Right.
But they get to a point, and you know, like when they're fighting, they don't, you know, the possibility is one of them could kill each other, and I'm sure that in a lot of fights
It happens.
that does happen,
Yeah.
right? But the majority of these fights, what ends up happening is that there's a clear winner and a clear loser, right? And the winner gives the loser grace to walk away.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? And I feel
Right.
like that and people don't give each other that much courtesy, you
Right.
know,
Well,
anymore.
because in the moment, I think there's a lot to that, and I'm appreciative of that example because I think we are but species, animal species in this kind of whole dynamic in this matrix that we're plugged into.
Mhm,
And what I think is lost, particularly in the Black community, is
mhm,
that grace to walk away
mhm,
and the choice to believe
mhm,
that you're bigger than what other people are saying. And so
mhm,
the power in that is you have the confidence to
mhm.
move. So somebody can tell you dumb and da 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 da. But if you don't believe that about yourself, then you're not dumb, right?
Right,
Like I said, nobody can do certain things to me. Nobody can say
right,
certain things to me because
right,
I really just don't believe them.
right.
And so you can be. This actually was a real thing. One of our neighbors, who's a crazy person, when we first moved into this neighborhood, she called me and my husband niggas, and we literally started laughing. Like we were like, "Girl, is
Like,
that
what is that? Where they
like, where they at?"
at?
Not touched by it. You know what I mean? We were like, yeah, you too.
Hey, but
So,
I love that. I love the way y'all handle that, right? Because you know it's
right.
funny, right? Because I was in a situation, right? And you know, it's weird because you know these. I realized this about myself too, which I attribute to Grandma Rose's rearing and upbringing of us, right? Which is that I don't hold on to old scars. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So like you know when we got spanked and all this when we got spanked,
We got to pick the
we
switch off the tree spank.
yeah, we actually got welted. You know, you got scars. You had a sign to show that you
You got
got
you
whooped.
got whooping.
But you know, those I don't see those scars anymore.
Yeah.
Those things don't. You know, even when I was young or whatever. Yeah, at the time I didn't like getting spanked. And, you know, I had all kinds of thoughts of retribution and stuff. But now, you know, even after that though, you know, it passes, right? And you're
Yeah.
not holding on to this. So like I could go through a situation that, you know, psychologically might be traumatic because I do think like our whole existence, every phase of our lives has been in crisis and trauma and all this.
Yeah.
But I would say that I'm not holding on to the pain bodies of of that trauma. You know what I mean? So I could literally go back and look at a situation that happened in my life and laugh at it like I'm popping popcorn. You know,
Right.
and
Right.
thankful for the lessons that are being taught in it. You know,
But
and
that's
then
the adaptive reaction. I think
that,
that's what you're trying to give to our other Black people is like we got to be able to sit back, take the lessons from those experiences, but they're not as harmful as we let them be. Like
100%.
it's interesting because uh I think my son or one of the young men around. I want to say my son for the purposes of this. I can tell a story.
Right,
I
right.
would say it was my son, and um, he mentioned that growing up, he never bought into men black men not being in their lives, because in our scenario, their father was more present than I was. And then when he looked around, 3 to 4 degrees separation.
Sorry, sister.
Yep. 3 to 4
Somebody don't realize that this is
you over here recording.
yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
So 3 to 4 degrees of separation.
Mm-hmm.
They had men in their lives, fathers, grandfathers, a lot of strong black men. And even I have a surrogate in Pop, where I have always had a strong silverback figure in my life. And so he never bought into it, right? But he would hear people, his white counterparts, make jokes about, like, is your dad around? And my son was like, is yours? Like, he would really embody the fact, like, uh, y'all ain't better than me for that thing that you want me to believe about myself, right? And even if it was true, he would say, like, do you know who my mom is? Like, he just never bought into this position of lack, and I've always appreciated that about him, right?
Well, I feel you. I appreciate that you shared that, because I'm gonna tell you that in our experience, I believe that the universe fills in every void, right? Because it's like in our case, both of our parents were not part of our early childhood development, right?
Right,
At certain stages of it, at least, right?
right,
And so we could not really be like, blame that on the father,
right,
right?
right.
Yeah, either one, right? What I mean?
Both of them. It was both of them.
But look at the beauty of the universe, right? Where
Right,
the moment that a void comes in, then it fills that void. Like, our grandmother steps in right away, so now we have a mother. She has
right,
a husband, and that man is a great man, and he's a father figure to us. Then in other stages of our life, like when we were removed from that, and here it is now, we're with our mother, but there is no real man there, right?
right,
But then we get that filtered. Like, each one of us has our own father figure that came in, a surrogate father that was able to influence us in certain ways. And
absolutely.
then, like, when I looked at it, and I was like, well, I don't have a brother. The universe saw this void and then put a real brother in my life.
Right, right,
That we connected more deeper than blood being our bond.
right,
And I feel
right,
like all of that, all of that being said, it's just that I realized that we lack nothing all the time.
right,
Like, if a person is born and they lose their parents completely, like, the community raises them and
right,
all that stuff. And yeah, these things are difficult. Like, I'm not undermining like how hard this are and what the effect that they bring to you. But you're right. Like, somebody on the outside trying to determine, what that means is crazy, right? And then
right,
the people looking at themselves, right? Because I was gonna say that as I watched myself evolve over time consciously, right? And
right,
then I found myself in a situation where I'm getting violated in the car.
right, right,
Two people, whatever.
right,
And inside of that situation, I'm in total zen, right? And people are asking me like, well, why didn't you respond to this situation violently?
right,
And the answer is very simple, because it's like you said, it's just I had the power to choose in which way I wanted to deal with it,
right,
right? But I chose not to do nothing in that situation that was anything remotely violent, because at the end of the day, that would be impulsive. That wouldn't solve anything, right?
right,
And
right,
then and the outcome of being violent would just leave me in the end of it wishing that I hadn't did it.
right,
You know what I'm
right,
saying? And I
right,
said, I've been too many moments in my life that I wish I could take back that last 10 minutes and do it different.
All over again.
You know what I mean? But then also I don't regret some of the choices I made because they led to uh, develop me into the person that I am now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Yeah.
I do. It does drive me crazy. The interaction between us as human beings because
Yeah.
in a certain situation, someone could say, "Well, you can trust me," which this always troubles me, right? When someone tells you you can trust me, because it's like, if I could trust you, I'll know it because your actions will show it. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean?
You don't
Yeah,
have to tell me. I'll know.
you don't have to tell me. But then also, when someone will be like, "Oh, we trust each other. I trust you. You trust me." And if you don't have the same reaction back, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then they're like, then they're, uh, it's like almost as if they want to mirror it. And I'm saying, well, look, in order for me to trust you, you have to give me trust, right?
Right.
But
Right.
but I can see in the ways that you're not giving me trust. Like,
Right.
yeah, you're gonna mislead me on a horizontal braid, or
Right.
you
Right.
know,
That
yeah,
horizontal braid got you.
yeah. But then at the same time, in the moment where that's being revealed, and I'm acknowledging, okay, she, for whatever reason, can't be real with me on this, right?
Right.
But then now, but you want to say how you don't want people to do you that way.
Right.
You're honest and all this stuff, and then like all you got to do, if it's as human beings, if we did not even talk at all, we had the inability to speak a word. All you have to do is watch people's actions, and the actions are speaking more than words could ever do.
Ever.
That whole adage is so true, right?
Right.
Because someone could tell you that they love you, right? But you could observe them in the way that they're dealing with someone else, and you could say, like, I could tell that person loves them.
Right.
They
Right.
don't really love me, though.
Right.
Let's say, for instance, the way that they are taking care of a family member, a parent or a
Right.
child, you could look at that and be like, they've been in over backwards for that person,
Right.
right? But then, so if I'm in the same scenario that that person would be in, would you treat me that same way?
Right.
So
Right.
like you said, you're taking your husband to an appointment, and he's sedated and all this stuff, but you're there for him.
Right. Right.
You told me a story that I thought about, and I was like, this was inspiring to me. You said something about you had to fall down the steps, and you're a little bit embarrassed. Your husband hears the tumbling and whatnot. Then he comes and sits with you at the step, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, in that moment, the fact that he just sat there with you, and while you're assessing yourself to see if there's any damage, and then licking the wounds on embarrassment and stuff, and
Right.
he's sitting there with you, and you feeling close to him. It was just like, remind me of the time when our nephew was with me, and we went on like a 4 mile walk, and we
Yeah.
didn't talk at all.
Yeah.
We just walked next to each other, and then he goes back home raving to his mama of like, wow, I felt so close to uncle.
Yeah.
And we didn't say a word.
Right.
It's
It's
these
those
things.
moments. Yeah.
It's these things.
So I think that there's a lot to take back and to take away from today is that, we got to still keep modeling and acting and being examples of who we want others to
Mhm.
be and how we want others to treat us. And especially amongst ourselves. Like if I could just uh, let that radiate out to the rest of the Black people in the world. Like we gotta, we don't have to be the sum of the characteristics that people are projecting on us. We can be who we are.
It's
Like I said, our community is empathetic, loving. We take in strays all the time. So we can do that for each other. And that love and that empathy um, is what connects us. And I have so much gratitude for the people who've showed up in our life that were examples of that. All those surrogates, the surrogate brothers, the surrogate fathers
shout
who
out to them.
shout out to all of them, which
Yeah.
we are going to give a huge shout out to the silverback that's in my life because um, there's a big thing that happened. As he retired, he decided to open up a bicycle shop, which is a totally different thing for him. It's called Cool Breeze Bicycles. We certainly celebrate that. It's located in Rockville, Maryland. And it is a family-owned business, and you'll get to meet the silverback, the baboon Sarah himself. along with his staff, who is also incredible. Um, Milton Etheridge and Manny. I don't know Manny's last name. And I'm so deeply appreciative of their life, of his influence on my life, and his wonderful wife Denise Etheridge, who is the person who makes everything work in the background. So they have this new shop, and Bruce and I actually had the benefit of going to see it. So it's beautiful. And so it's springtime. Bust out y'all bikes and go to Cool Breeze Bicycles and get your bikes tuned up and support this Black-owned business. Because supporting that Black-owned business really supports you. And that's, I think, the point of today for me, is that our community is so big and so vast and so supportive, that we help not only grow people, like, I don't know if I would be the young woman that I am today without the influences of the Etheridges, but certainly my kids are touched by it, and their kids will be touched by their influence. And I know the same thing for you and Wes, and what you bring to Wes's family. So I appreciate you hanging out with me in the Rose
thank
Garden.
you, sister. I appreciate you as well, and salute to Milton and Denise for what they're doing, and much love to them, and for all of the surrogates that have impacted our lives and the community as a whole, because we really are one big family. We should all care about each other, but we got to definitely salute those ones that's close in our circle. And
Absolutely, we ain't getting rid of them, and
yeah.
in our circle they can cook. We not eating none of them foods that's not well seasoned. They can cook. They're funny. They breathe life into all of us. I think Wes isn't he like growing food and stuff out there in Cali?
Wes is growing organic, healthy foods. Wes is one of the most disciplined people in that way that I've known. But
Right.
he's very mindful and intentional, and I think like that's what we definitely need to be. And
Right.
yeah, he's growing food because his belief was that our food supply was being poisoned. So he wants to do something in action to be able to provide, for himself and for the community, healthy options.
Well, you tell Wes I'm trying to be his cousin in that, but I ain't giving up my chocolate. So unless he figure out a way to make that chocolate.
Get some chocolate that's vegan though.
Is it? I'll have to talk to Wes. I just don't have Wes's discipline at all. The last time I saw him, I mean, he had like muscles in his eyes and in his he ate on a schedule. Like I eat when I want to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no doubt. But I mean, I think that ultimately, like we take a step closer in the right direction when we do things like this, which is being very mindful about what we need to do going forward, right?
Absolutely.
Make choices. Don't be impulsive. You decide the reality we want to live in collectively together.
Absolutely. All right. I'll see you next week in the Rose Garden.
All right. Next week, sister. You take good care. All right. Bye for now.
Brother.
Yeah, sister.
We stopped recording. That was good.
Yeah. I thought so too.
That was really good.
It's always good. Everybody always raves about